Everyone thinks the moat is the chip. It isn't, and it hasn't been for years. A competitor can build a faster processor. That happens more often than the headlines suggest. What a competitor cannot easily build is 20 years of other people's habits, the libraries already written, the researchers already trained, the code that already runs and that nobody wants to touch. That is the actual barrier, and it is made of software. This is Under the Hood, the technology the world actually runs on, one layer at a time. Today, the layer nobody sees and why it decides who gets paid. Start with what the software is for. A normal processor is a small number of very clever workers doing one thing after another quickly. A graphics processor is the opposite. Thousands of simple workers all doing the same small thing at once. That shape is perfect for graphics, and it turned out perfect for the mathematics underneath modern artificial intelligence, which is mostly the same multiplication performed a staggering number of times. But thousands of workers are useless if you cannot tell them what to do. The software that lets an ordinary programmer command them without knowing anything about the hardware underneath is the invention, not the silicon, the instruction manual. Now the part that is genuinely hard to copy, the timing. That software shipped in the mid-2000s, years before there was any commercial reason for it to exist. There was no AI boom, there was no obvious customer. It was given to universities, taught to graduate students, and left to grow in a field that did not yet have a market. Which means by the time anyone needed it urgently, an entire generation of researchers had already learned to think in it. You cannot go back and acquire 20 years of that. It is the one input nobody can buy. What that head start built is a loop, and loops are what make positions durable. Researchers write their work against the software because that is what runs. Their papers become the libraries everyone else builds on. Students learn those libraries because that is what the jobs ask for. And every new tool assumes the whole stack is already there, which makes the next researcher's decision easier than the last one's. Nothing in that loop is a product. Every turn of it makes the alternative slightly more expensive. So price the switch properly, because this is where most analysis goes wrong. A rival is not asking you to replace a chip. It is asking you to rewrite code that already works, revalidate results you have already published, retrain people who are already productive, and accept that the first year will be slower while everyone learns. Even if the new hardware were free and faster, the bill is enormous. And it is paid in the one currency a research team cannot borrow: time. There is an older version of this story, and it is worth knowing because it ended. When America built its railways, the fortune was not only in the track, it was in the gauge, the distance between the rails. Once enough track was laid to one standard, every wagon, every workshop, every siding in the country had to match it, and whoever owned that standard collected from everyone who came after. Standards are the most profitable thing in industrial history, and they are almost never the thing anybody set out to sell. Which brings us to how a position like this actually ends, because it does end, and pretending otherwise is not analysis. 3 things break it, historically. Someone builds a layer of translation on top, so the code stops caring what it runs on. The largest customers get big enough to fund an alternative themselves, because at their scale, the switching bill is smaller than the toll. And a new generation is trained on something else, which is slow, invisible, and the one that has actually finished off every standard before this one. Watch for those 3, not for a faster chip. So here is the transferable part, and it works far away from chips. When you look at any technology business, find the layer that everything else is written against. Not the product with the best specification, the thing other people's work depends on. That layer sets the price. It is almost always unglamorous, usually free at first, and it is where the profit quietly settles for a decade or two. The chip is what you can see. The habit is what you are actually paying for. Next, in Under the Hood, the memory sitting beside the processor, and why the world can build the chips faster than it can feed them.